Hello all, my name is John Ryan Segovia, and I am here to help you explore the wonders of the brief history of artificial intelligence, the potential that it has to surpass humanity, and what that could mean for us all. The problem of artificial intelligence becoming so powerful that it overruns humanity was not a realistic concern until this generation, as the technology of that time could not have made this possible. These present concerns have further been pushed by the media, steadily releasing content of AI becoming smart enough to become a legitimate threat. This was seen as science fiction before because of the lack of technology to make these fears a reality. With this idea only recently gaining the power to become a legitimate concern, there is so much new and fresh content that is being presented, but not a lot to be able to look back on. This leads someone who is interested in the field to need to take an interdisciplinary approach and use different educational backgrounds like computer science, psychology, humanities to analyze the complexities of this industry and the advantages and problems that it presents. Many of us by now have preconceived notions of what artificial intelligence means exactly because the media provides creations for the public to read and watch that promote the idea of robots becoming self-sufficient and using their artificial intelligence. These artificial intelligence can be seen expressing emotions and showing reasoning like in iRobot or taking over humanity like in the Terminator. This expression and creation of ideas consistently across the media can be explained by the psychology principle of priming. Priming is the process by which activated mental constructs can influence how individuals evaluate others' concepts and ideas. This phenomenon can be represented here in this image. We're given three culinary objects and asked to complete a word by filling in a letter. Because of the objects given, we're more than likely going to answer soup. But if we look at this image instead, because the three objects that we have been given have changed, our answer is more than likely going to change to soap instead of soup. These principles can also be exemplified by Madeline Ford in her article, What is Priming?, where she highlights three experiments conducted by John Varg to explore the effects of priming. In the first experiment, the participants were primed with words related to elderly people, but the researchers never mentioned age or disabilities of any kind. They found that these participants actually walked out of the experiments much slower than the control group of peers. In the second experiment, they found that the participants who had been primed with words related to rudeness were more likely to interrupt the experimenter. And in the third experiment, they found that whenever they primed the participants with African American stereotypes, they subliminally reacted with more hostile and violent tendencies to a vexatious request of the experimenter. These principles are also used by politicians, business advertising, psychologists performing experiments, and the media to make people feel a certain way and influence their behavior and thoughts on certain subjects. In the media, the idea of artificial intelligence becoming a threat to humanity has spanned back to the time the field of AI was created and has continued into recent times as well. We can see films of people having a computer in their possession that's supposed to dictate our lives and help make improvements. Everything seems to be going smoothly and as the programs intended until contradictions in the computer's programming lead the AI to have a meltdown and begin doing things to harm us in the name of its protocol. This idea can be seen represented in films like 2001, A Space Odyssey, and even children's films like Wall-E. The antagonists for both of these movies actually look a lot like each other, and they can be represented by a lot of other cultural references in the media throughout our history. Technology has exhibited a trend of exponential growth throughout history. Back in 1958, Gordon Moore predicted that computing would dramatically increase in power and decrease in relative cost. Little did he know that he would still be correct about this 50 years later, represented by Moore's law, which is the rule that the processing power of computer chips will grow twice as powerful every 2 years. This can also be seen in the advancements of some of our most crucial inventions of our time, the cell phone, television, and the automobile. In 1973, Martin Cooper and his team at Motorola invented the cell phone. And when asked to reminisce on this journey, he always likes to talk about the first cell phone call that he made, where he went onto the streets of Brooklyn just to call his rival and let him know that he had successfully completed the technology they had been striving for so long. He also likes to talk about the progression of cell phone technology and how far it's come, saying that he knew someday that everybody would have a cell phone, but it was hard to imagine that it would happen in his lifetime. But in 2007, just 34 short years after the invention of the cell phone and only 24 years after it was released on the market, Steve Jobs debuts the iPhone, once again changing the world with another revolutionary idea. Philo Farnsworth brings us the television in 1927, which is another innovation that we all cherish to this day. Um, Fast forward 26 years, and the first national color television broadcast is of the Rose Parade. 7 years after that, in 1997, we're introduced to the first flat screen TV, which is 42 inches and a little chunky by today's measurements. But this TV completely took over the market over the next decade after its release. While some people credit Henry Ford with the invention of the automobile, he was actually the man who combined the creation of cars with the assembly line and made improvements in manufacturing them more efficiently. He brought the car to the people in the process, but Carl Benz was the man who actually created the automobile. He invented the three-wheel motor car back in 1886, known as the motor wagon. This was a revolutionary invention back then, and it paved the way for many, many designs for the cars to be improved to where they are now today. Today, back in May 2017, Elon Musk actually said that we were 2 years away from being able to sleep in our cars. While this may seem outlandish and a reach, the Verve actually reported that Waymo, an autonomous division of Google's parent company Alphabet, debuted the first ever fully self-driving car. It is able to drive itself around completely independently. No safety driver present. The only thing is that it's limited to a very small geographical location. It only drives around in this town in Arizona. They're working on getting more scans for the roads around, but until then, it's just limited to that town. But this is still a huge step in the right direction for fully driving, self-driving cars. Not only were all those inventions a critical part of most of the population's daily lives, these are also inventions who have taken on advancements and have adapted into using artificial intelligence in some way to improve their appeal and functionality. But who do we have to thank for this idea of artificial intelligence? Where did it originate? Well, it can be linked back to a Spanish inventor named Leonardo Torres. He debuted the El Ajedrecita, or chess player, at the 1914 Paris World Fair. This was considered the world's first computer game in which the machine would play an endgame of king and rook against a human player's sole king. The machine, no matter what, would force a checkmate in a few moves, no matter how the human played their position. This was the origin of the quest to artificially recreate human thought with mathematical numbers and equations. It was the origin of the quest to create artificial intelligence. In 1950, the father of computer science, Alan Turing, proposed a game to test to see if machines could think. This game was to have three individuals: person A, a male in question; B, a female in question; and C, a female or male interrogator. The interrogator was not told the sex of either A or B and had to determine the sexes by asking the two questions. Everyone was held in different rooms to keep identities anonymous, and they were given questions by the interrogator. Person A was supposed to try to deceive the interrogator by giving them false answers to throw them off. Person B's goal was to help the interrogator by giving them truthful answers and even go as far as to say, "I am female" in her answers. This effort would be no good, as person A would be doing just as much to confuse person C with their own answers. The true test in this entire process lies when a machine takes the role of person A and attempts to deceive the interrogator into thinking that they are a female. Could a machine falsely convince a human being that it is one of us better than actual humans? while this was a huge possibility and Alan Turing had immense faith into the entire process, there was just a few hiccups keeping machines from being able to do this for so long. Because just as humans are intelligent, they're also by nature um, lacking in common sense sometimes. So, in order to be convincing, a computer had to strategically make mistakes so as to seem that it was more human. John McCarthy, a computer scientist, actually was the individual who coined the term artificial intelligence in 1955, shortly before he organized the Dartmouth Conference in the summer of 1955. This was essentially a summer research project where these very bright minds just came together to conceptualize the idea of artificial intelligence. It was so outlandish at the time that only 11 scientists and mathematicians had planned on attending, and not even all 11 of them showed up. It was basically just a big brainstorming session that lasted for 6 weeks, but this is where artificial intelligence originated. They took this idea in this new area of knowledge and they ran with it. They had a lot of great success in the first few years that led to a lot more bright minds being attracted to the field. This brought funds nationwide, globally, to be able to just look into this research and progress this area of knowledge further. This attracted people like Mr. Frank Rosenblatt, for example, into the field. Frank Rosenblatt was a research psychologist that got his PhD right around the time the Dartmouth Conference was founded and immediately began working on his Mark I perceptron. This was a artificial intelligence that was designed for image recognition funded by the United States Office of Naval Research. I could learn by trial and error using a neural network. It was very complicated and random, but similar to humans. He debuted at a conference in Washington on July 7th, 1958, and Mr. Rosenblatt hyped it up so much that the New York Times reported it as the embryo of an electronic computer that the Navy expects will be able to walk, talk, see, write, reproduce itself, and be conscious of its existence. Later, perceptrons will be able to recognize people and call out their names instantly triangulate speech in one language to speech and writing in another. This is quite a bold statement for the 1950s. If the growth of artificial intelligence would have stayed at that rate, there's no telling where the progression would have taken us, but there's just a huge push from the opposition. They didn't really see this as a realistic projection, and the counter argument would prove detrimental to the field of AI research. The philosopher Hubert de Frousse came out in 1972 with his article "What Computers Can't Do," and it questioned the predictions of AI technology progression and where it was going in the future. The lack of faith that this created in the public led to a dark period which had major budget cuts across the globe and not a lot of progress being made. This was the case until 1997, when IBM's artificial intelligence bested world champion chess player Garry Kasparov. By doing this, it just restored faith in the potential for artificial intelligence, and it just seemed that the field of research and development was booming after this point. IBM even went and produced another AI named Watson that defeated two reigning champs on the TV show Jeopardy! Not only did Watson defeat them simultaneously, but it accumulated more than 3 times of their winnings. Then in 2016, Google developed an AI named AlphaGo that defeated the reigning 18-time world champion of Go. Go is a two-player board game that originated in China thousands of years ago and was introduced into Japan 1,200 years ago. The object of Go is to take turns taking over a territory on a 9 by 9 grid, placing either white or black stones on these intersection points. Whoever is able to surround more territory, including surrounding your opponent's pieces, wins the game. This was a huge accomplishment. It was amazing because Go was considered one of the last games that AI would just consistently lose to a pro human player. And not only was Lee Sedol, AlphaGo's opponent, a very skilled pro human player, he had widely been considered the best Go player of the past decade. This achievement shows how technology is increasingly able to best humans, and it just shows the exponential growth that artificial intelligence has presented. In his article, How Artificial Intelligence Has Changed Our Lives, Gregory Lamb gives us a good insight into some of the wonders of artificial intelligence today. We have self-driving cars where we can make and receive phone calls, get weather updates, check the traffic, change the destination, get sports updates, all from the comfort of the passenger seat, not having to touch the steering wheel. At iRobot Corporation in Bedford, Massachusetts, they're working on a 5 foot tall robot named Ava, who's able to independently navigate hallways, avoiding obstacles and other people in preparation for its real job later, um, which is going to be a telemedicine robot, allowing a specialist thousands of miles away to visit patients in different hospital rooms around the world using a screen that's mounted in Ava's head. When the physician is ready to visit another patient, he just taps on the new location on a computer map, and should that hospital have an Ava unit, the physician will be on their way to the next room or the next patient while the Ava goes back to another room and is able to navigate itself independently. We also have smart homes that are on the up and coming side of artificial intelligence in Pullman, Washington, at Washington State University. Um, they're adjusting homes to become smart homes. The sensors will automatically adjust lights, monitor sleep patterns, monitor exercise, monitor actions. It kind of sounds like being under house arrest at times, but there's definitely some positive aspects to this advancement. Uh, People that struggle with mental or physical disabilities, learning disabilities, senior citizens, people that might need hospice care could be able to live more independently should these smart homes have a way to administer medication or remind them to take medication or just do other things on their own. We're even starting to see smart technologies in everything: cars, phones, televisions, emails, houses, applications, social media sites, cameras, accessories. I even used artificial intelligence to type up my senior thesis, and it corrected many spelling errors that I have, just like we all do. This can be seen in so many applications, and yes, even toasters for those of us that just can't wait by the toaster for our toast to get ready. You can now get a notification on your phone whenever your toast is primed and ready. It seems we're taking a lot of steps to incorporate AI into our lives, which could definitely give us a positive benefit, make things a little easier for us. But this incorporation has been seen as a negative advancement in the eye of some of our experts and great minds of our time, as well as a growing number of the population. Stephen Hawking was reported telling the BBC that developing AI would mean the extinction of the human race. And defending this remark, he said AI would take off on its own and redesign itself at an ever increasing rate, and humans who are limited by slow biological evolution could not compete and would be superseded. Elon Musk, the Mr. Tesla and Mr. Send Everybody to Mars, one of the most innovative minds of our time, said that AI technology was more dangerous than nukes. The problem with these thoughts is that the capabilities needed for this artificial intelligence to become a legitimate threat is still very far away, um, and people just aren't concerned because they just don't see it being a possibility yet. Kenneth Forbus says that the next 30 years is going to be extremely exciting for AI research and that we could potentially reach human level artificial intelligence. Kevin Drum says in his article that there's a real threat of artificial intelligence taking jobs away from the human population. He breaks down the classification of jobs into the different categories and explains how the artificial intelligence will come in and take these routine physical jobs first, because it's easier to program an artificial intelligence to do just medial labor tasks. But they'll eventually work their way to these non-routine cognitive professions like teachers, doctors, CEOs. It may seem like a stretch, but the artificial intelligence definitely has the potential to learn and become a doctor. Um, In Krittanawong's article, she points out that physicians diagnose disease based off of their personal medical histories. They have physical scans that they're able to do, physical examinations. They're able to do these tests and mark down these scores, but AIs can actually diagnose based off of complicated algorithms, imaging results from millions of patients. They're able to look at physicians' notes across history. They can instantaneously look up published clinical research to back up any preconceived notions that they have of any kind of sickness. Um, this advancement is definitely some time away, but it's still a real threat that needs to be thought about today. With the advancement and creation of the manufacturing line, we saw a destruction in the amount of jobs that were offered to the population. Everybody wanted to just get rid of human assembly line workers and just create a machine assembly line because they didn't have to pay machines. This could be the same thought process that comes into the idea of a more developed and intellectual artificial intelligence coming in and taking jobs. They could become more intelligent and end up taking jobs that require more intelligence, and this could spell a very questionable end for how humans could be divvying up the jobs, and it's definitely something that needs to be thought about. We're at the forefront of this new era of technology, but it begins with the development of artificial intelligence. With the advancements and achievements taking place, we're stepping closer to being able to create a truly independent machine. As for right now, we have an explosion of all these ideas coming from the forefront of this movement and paving the way for future technologies. But this is the beginning. Much like how an infant is not ready to go out into the world alone, this technology needs some time to mature and learn. One thing is for certain that our technology is advancing and it's at an alarming rate. After seeing how quickly technology can advance and how the exponential growth of processing power is projected to maintain its course, it's a lot easier to see the potential of AI technology becoming very powerful. The reality is we have not reached the point where AI is a threat, not yet at least, and we need to enjoy the advancements and accomplishments that we have brought about in the world that we live in today. We need to focus on advancing this technology and improving the quality of life for everyone, rather than dwelling on the negative potential of this ever expanding field. We need to focus on improving the future for all and work towards a better tomorrow.